Thanks for listening to this episode of How I Got Here. If you're looking for more great stories, we've made it easier to find our guests on our new website, hightlh.com. That's HIGHTLH.com. You can search by the order of the episodes, starting with the most recent, by guest name, or by industry category. So explore the website at hightlh.com and decide who else you want to meet today.
If you do not put yourself up front, if you do not put the women up front, they just assume they're in the back. And so I think it's so important in what you're doing to make sure people know what you're doing. And you have to advertise it, because there's always going to be an assumption. If there's somebody older than you in your business, they're going to assume that person's in charge. If there's a male, they're going to assume that. So I think that a big barrier for me has always been saying, hey, I'm also a middle child, so I say, hey, look at me a lot.
The forgotten one, as my middle daughter reminds me of.
Yes. So I just think that it's always important to be an advocate for yourself and to put yourself out there.
From Fiore Communications, it's How I Got Here, a show of inspiring stories from Tallahassee area leaders, business owners, and neighbors, all the challenges, opportunities, inspirations, the twists and turns of life that led them to where they are today. Everyone has a story worth telling, and I am really grateful that we get to bring a few of them to you. I truly have been changed by my conversations with these amazing people, and I'm confident you will be too. Welcome, everybody, to a live episode of How I Got Here, featuring 3 successful women entrepreneurs representing the local brewing scene. I am pleased to welcome first Shannon Smith from Ground Ops Roastery and Bakehouse, Michaela Teasley from Kombucha, and Alison Denny from Amicus Brewing Ventures. I normally talk to one person at a time, so what we're going to do here is have 3 mini interviews. They're going to give a streamlined version of their journeys, and then we'll have a short panel discussion at the end for some topics that they all can relate to and hopefully will be helpful to you. And if we have a minute afterwards, we can take a couple of questions. All right, does that all sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, you have the microphone, so we're going to start with you.
I do.
All right, Shannon, you grew up in West Palm Beach, right? So just tell us what life was like for you. What was your family? What was your whole kind of origin story there?
Sure. So I was born when my mom was in high school. So she had me her senior year of high school. So back then, they'd hide you in a portable at the edge of campus because it was real taboo. I'm old. It was 1977. In case anybody knows. And so she was real young, and then she did become a drug addict, and then married somebody who was an alcoholic. So I didn't meet my real dad until much later, but he was my adopted dad. And so long story short is that my grandparents really stepped in and mostly raised me. I do have a lot of influences from my mom that are positive, but really if I look at who kind of my lifelines were, it was my grandparents, but especially my grandma. I think I learned from an early age to kind of take care of myself just because I had to sometimes with my siblings and stuff. So I've always been pretty independent in that way.
Siblings?
I do. So I'm the oldest, so bossy. And then I have 3 younger siblings. They're all actually half siblings. Because again, like I said, my mom has had an interesting journey in her life. And my half sister, I actually did not meet again until I was 19 years old. Because my birth dad was also in high school when my mom got pregnant, and then he kind of went off, started his life, and then we came back together when I was 19.
So I don't want to skip over that. It's a pretty dramatic story. So how has that impacted your outlook and perspective on everything else that you've faced from that point?
I think when you're going through that stuff, right? I mean, some of it was, very unpleasant and sometimes scary and violent and, all the things. But I also think that if I look back, I really am so much of who I am because of those things. And very gratefully that I did have my grandmother there always as kind of an anchor, right? I do think it influenced me later to become a foster mom, right? And to eventually adopt my own sons. I think it influenced my heart for serving kids, in Title I schools here in our community at Riley Elementary. And I think I've always been a protector just because I sort of felt like I had to be the protector. And I always have been really honestly more mature than even my mom at times, right? Just because I had to be. But I think it also just gave me a very resilient spirit. And I think in business especially, you need to have that. So I think that's been a benefit there.
For sure. So what led to your decision to attend the University of Florida, as misguided as it may have been?
I know. So, but here's the deal. So I was in high school, I was in journalism, I was on the student newspaper, but then I also was a total thespian. I mean, I was big into musical theater and all the things. Because of my childhood where things were so uncertain, and I literally lost count one time of how many times I had to move around, the idea of being in a career like theater where you just don't really know where your next paycheck is going to come from was like huge red flag. I just felt like, I can't do it. So journalism, because again, I'm pretty old, back then, it was a very stable career. And I loved writing, and so I did print journalism, and I chose UF because they have such a strong print journalism program. If I had gone into theater, honestly, I probably would have ended up at FSU, just because they have a great, Yeah.
All right, so was it your goal to be a reporter when you went to study journalism? Was that the what you had in mind?
I feel like I was one of the, I don't think it's common for kids to go into college and truly know like what they want to do. I have always been a very laser focused person. Like, I mean, I can even remember as young as 6, like I decided like I am not going to be like mom and I'm going to like achieve. And so that kept me, I think, very driven. So I knew coming out of, high school, I'm going to go to UF, I'm going to study journalism, I'm going to get a job at the Alligator, I want to become editor of the Alligator, and I'm going to work in newspapers. And it was pretty focused,
Yeah. Well, it worked out. You made a good decision. You ended up
yeah.
working at some major newspapers for like 7 years, right, in Florida?
Mm-hmm.
So was that experience what you thought it was going to be? Did you enjoy that?
Oh, I did enjoy it, yes. I mean, the thing I love about reporting, and I think the same thing I love about being in my current, day job at Moore Agency and then also with Ground Ops, is that every day is different. You kind of go in and you don't really know what that day is going to be. You don't know who you're going to be interviewing. You don't know what kind of news is going to break. Very similar things. And in all of those fields, you have to learn to be a good communicator. You have to learn to take in a lot of complicated information quickly and with urgency and accuracy, spit that information back out, right? And so I think all of those things lend really well to the things that I've done.
Okay, great. And I know you worked for the governor's office. We don't have time to talk about that, but I'm sure that was a different experience. You kind of jumped to the other side.
I did, yes.
Yeah, you did that. And then you started working at Moore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're still there. You're now managing director. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about your journey through Moore and what you're doing now, what you focus on now there.
Yeah, so I got there in 2008. Again, I'd been in the governor's office. He decided to run for Senate, Charlie Crist. I was like, I have no desire to go to D.C. I just didn't. And so I ended up at the Moore Agency. Terry Ard, our president, took me to lunch. So at the time, guys, I was also kind of balancing my passion for fitness. And so I wanted to kind of build my fitness brand, and a coworker said, oh, you need to talk to Terry Ard about that. Terry has a really good quality of being able to take people to lunch, and then before you know it, you've agreed to work at Moore. Like if she identifies you as a great fit. So that's basically what she did. But it was different at first because it is a different way of using communications. But so much of the skill set, I caught on pretty quickly and I really liked it. I've done a lot of education and workforce clients because that is a passion of mine. I covered education and higher education as a reporter. And so it ended up really working for my wheelhouse. And it's an amazing company. And now I get to help run the wellness program and then also our impact program where we do a lot of work in the community. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Again, when I looked over everything, you're an Arbonne regional vice president too. You're a fitness instructor at Premier. You once owned your own fitness studio. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about your relationship with fitness and health and business and how all that integrates together for you.
Yeah, I mean, I started doing boot camps here in town at Doak back when they would let us in to run and do stadiums. Did anybody ever do that? And then they did the construction. They kind of kicked us all out. But so I would, I would run those. Here's my passion. My passion, I think, is helping to elevate people to see what they're capable of. Right? It's what I do when I go into the kindergarten classroom at Riley for a 5-year-old. It's also what I do if somebody comes in and they're starting a fitness journey and they're uncertain and they don't think they can do it, to help them see that they can, right? So I, loved doing all of those things. And then, the sort of not following, but the people that were wanting to, do things with me grew. And so I decided to open that studio. I had it for 5 years. And, when you own your own business, as we'll talk more about, there's all these other things that you also have to think about. And so it was a lot. I was, balancing that with my job at Moore, but I had a great team of coaches. And then I did start fostering children. And so the owner of that building was basically selling that to, and I could have relocated, but at the time, after 5 years in business, it was a really good time to say, you know what, I don't need to own it anymore. I can just be the instructor that shows up. And so that's basically what I get to do now at Premier. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You mentioned about being a mom, and you adopted 2 sons. So how old were they when you adopted them, and how old are they now?
6 and 9, and now 15 and almost 12. I know.
So no big changes. They're exactly the same now as they were, right? No. Yeah. Personality, everything's the same.
Oh, yeah. 15 is, in some ways, they're so much easier because, when Caden was 6, it was like, okay, there's a lot you still have to kind of help guide them through. And now they are really their own kind of people and their own interests, but it also starts to get more complicated. So the idea of my oldest son behind the wheel of a car is terrifying.
All right. And it was through your son, you had a situation that allowed you to meet a Leon County deputy named Chris Smith.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
So tell us about that situation and how you met. We don't have to get into the details of that, but just
basically,
how that brought together.
Caden got in trouble at school. He got suspended for 5 days. It was December 9th of 2021. I was, single mom, just trying to keep this afloat. I had 4 rescue dogs, working at Moore. It was a lot. And I was kind of just fed up, And so I called. Does everybody have like a dial a friend, right? That you call them when you're like, they're going to know the answer to this. So I called a coworker. I said, I need you to send over a male in uniform to set Caden straight. Like, he needs to understand that his choices have consequences. And so bottom line, she said, I'm going to send over Deputy Chris Smith. I was like, fine. I had no idea who that was. He came over the next day. He did an amazing job with Caden. I did notice right away that he was handsome. And
I was going to ask when the focus switched from your son to the deputy, but...
Well, after he did the talk with Caden, he took him outside, and at this point, Caden kind of realized he was not going to get arrested, and so he started to be Caden, which is just, he's an amazing kid, and he was asking Chris all these questions, do you have dogs? And he was saying things like, well, yeah, it's just me and the dogs at the house, and I'm still a reporter in my mind, okay, so I pick up on things really fast. And so I was like, oh, just him and the dogs. And then, yeah, we like to go on the boat. And he has a boat. And he talked about flying. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's a pilot. You know what I mean? And he had brought me a baked good, which I ended up eating later. It became one of the things we sell most famously at the shop. And I thought, and he bakes, But at first I was confused because he's like, has like a plate of baked goods. He's got a taser, a gun, in his uniform.
Chris, you're making regular guys look bad here, I just have to say.
Yeah, it was a lot. But I was so grateful for him. But a few days in, it ended up being real clear that we were definitely, liking each other. And Caden said, now that I can tell you guys you like Mr. Chris, does that mean I'm not in trouble anymore? So, yeah.
All right, so after that, you got married and then at some point decided to go into business together.
Yes.
So where did the idea come from for you to join forces to do that?
So when I met Chris, he already was kind of making the early stages of, I'm going to open a bakery, right? He kind of thought, I'm going to retire soon, open this bakery. He had a location, but it was a long way from being renovated. And so it was not too far from the timeline, but of course, all renovations take about 3 times as long as you think it's going to take. And so by the time, so we got married in October of 2022, and then the shop opened in November of 2023. And so we did, and it was sort of like, there was no question that we weren't going to go into it together. I've always personally loved to cook. I come from an Italian family. Food is love. I've baked. I have some of my earliest memories are baking in the kitchen with my grandma. And so I kind of, loved the idea of doing that. And then a lot of my skill sets, PR and marketing and, all those things really translated well to be able to help on those aspects of ground ops. Mm-hmm.
Great. Just real quickly, just give us an overview of what ground ops is all about.
Sure.
What do you serve? What is the vibe you're going for, the whole thing?
Yeah, we are a roastery and bakehouse, so we roast all of our coffee on site, and we source them from different very much ethical and sustainable places around the world. And then everything is made from scratch in-house. We're famous for our cinnamon rolls. Those are Chris's recipe. He had been making those for friends for years, and they kept saying like, oh, you should open a bakery. You should open a bakery. So he finally did. We do sell Hello Cakes. So that is basically what he brought me that first day. And so because I'm a PR person, when we were going to open the bakery, I was like, we have to have a name for this. thing that is so good that you make. And so we called it a hello cake because that is how he said hello. So we always say that the hello cake has a love story. But yeah, we serve savory rolls, pies, cakes, you name it. So a lot. Yep.
Great. An iconic location there on Thomasville Road.
Yes, we're right at the point.
Monroe.
Yeah, where Thomasville meets Monroe, right there when they kind of intersect. And we are veteran owned, law enforcement owned as well. And so we really, I think, mostly just want to be a place that is welcoming to people and that they feel that they can come just sit and have kind of like that third place away from home and work.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing that. All right, Michaela, you're up. All right, going to start with the same general question at the beginning. You grew up in Atlanta, right? In the Atlanta area. So tell us about your life growing up. What was your family situation?
I had the opportunity to grow up being the firstborn. So that means so much responsibility on me to help raise my brother and sister. We have a 7-year difference in between all of us. So it really was a challenge to try to find a connection with each and every one of them. And going through that facet of seeing my mom become a nurse and also have her background in culinary that had an impact on me and how I saw agriculture, how I saw food, how I was able to enjoy the love of food because my mom talked about it all the time, but I was a person to enjoy eating the food, so invite me for that. But I also took the time to learn how to make true connection at the table and watching TV shows as a child and trying to form that as just a young child. Even with my family, I knew the importance of sitting down and having a meal together and having that experience with the food and the beverages was something I didn't know was going to have an impact on me later on, but I was like, I have to hold on to this. And that actually made me want to work for the food channel, to travel and be able to write, but I hated writing. So catch me on the camera eating delicious foods, traveling around the world, but get someone else like Shannon to write it, and then we can work together. But after that, I knew that I had to take the time to, of course, I got my undergrad degree. But before getting my undergrad degree in HR and marketing, I had the opportunity to sit down and study bioengineering, and that had another impact on how I saw our food and our agriculture. And I was like, okay, I don't want to go in the medical field, but I knew I had to do something for even just for my family of how to protect my family from getting certain diseases that were being made even by our own country.
Were you surprised when you'd meet people at college or someplace and they didn't look at food the same way? Because for a lot of people, food is just throw it on, watch TV, sit, and just, it's something you need to keep going, but there's not that joy and appreciation for it. Did you assume everybody felt like you did?
Oh, absolutely not. I saw how people just picked up some brand name chips and they just shoved it in their mouth. I was like, oh, that is not healthy. But then I understood, sometimes we're more focused on other things in our life, and we see food as just fuel. And people are like, hey, well, this is what I need. This is a temporary fuel, and not realizing the side effects, or, hey, why am I sneezing now? Or why do I have cancer? Or why do I have this? So sitting back and seeing that, hey, something needs to happen. Even on a college campus, I was like, can we have healthier foods? And they're like, oh, go talk to our supplier, and me going in to try to talk and make a change. And they're like, oh, bless your heart.
What a sweet person.
Yeah, that's not going to fit our budget.
Right.
So those are the things that I've noticed, even in the education system. Being able to, I work with the Farm Alliance, so being able to help bridge that gap of having healthy food even in our school systems, but still at an affordable rate, that is something that is always going to be a challenge, especially when it's supposed to be organic or even local. That is something that we face till this day, and that is something that I still have a heart for.
Yeah, that's great. You went to Columbus State University, right? And you majored in human resources, and you went and actually earned your master's degree too in HR, correct? So did you think that was going to be your career path? I know your first few jobs were in HR. Sounds like that wasn't your heart necessarily, but did you enjoy that? Why HR, and what do you remember most about that time?
So I chose HR because it was a position that you can have for a very long time and paid well. But what I didn't realize is that not a lot of people were moving out of those positions. So
it's because they're in them for a long time.
Yeah. So I learned that my senior year, but then I also understood myself. I worked when I could work at the age of 14. I used to walk a mile to work at Zaxby's. And during that time, I was like, I would rather be behind the scenes and know how people got paid, how much they were getting paid, when is the ship going to go floating down the hill. So that's why I was like, I'd rather be on the HR side to be able to train and develop people, but then also have an ear and an eye to what is really impacting this business. So that is the reason why I went in HR. But then through that journey, I realized absolutely that is not for me. And let me take a pause in a moment to really see what is for me.
Okay. Well, let's get into that. Let's talk about your kombucha journey here.
Yeah.
So first, just real quickly, tell us, for people who may not know, what is kombucha?
So one-liner, kombucha is a fermented tea that helps with your immune and digestive system.
Well, that was quick. That was good. That was a good answer. And we'll be right back. How I Got Here is sponsored by Barano Heating and Air Conditioning in Tallahassee. I've been friends with Patrick Barano since we met in a chamber leads group about 15 years ago. I'll admit that I pursued him pretty hard to be his marketing firm and eventually won him over. And the reason I wanted to work with him is that I was already a customer and I knew what kind of company he and his father before him had built. He cares about his customers, he cares about his team, and he cares about this community. I've experienced Barano Heating and Air when they installed a complete system replacement a few years ago, and I enjoy peace of mind and same-day service with my Total Comfort Service Agreement. I've also been behind the scenes at their office and seen firsthand the true character of this company. And that's why we're so proud to represent them. To learn more or to schedule an appointment online anytime, visit baranoac.com. They really always will be there for you. And now back to the show. And you became interested in it because you were having some health issues and wanted to explore if this might be a good remedy for you, right?
Absolutely. So I just had my daughter. I'm a Mexican food lover. And when I went into having contractions, I was eating Mexican food. Went to the doctor and I said, Lord, this baby's going to be big. So... And I was like, we're going to have to figure this out. So don't let it come out my hoo-ha. So we're going to figure this out. So I had a C-section, and right after they pumped me up with a whole bunch of antibiotics and not realizing how much chaos it was going to cause on my body. So, of course, even in the hospitals, I'm trying to make a difference there. They give you food, but it's not to help bring life back to your gut. It's to help sustain whatever you have in there. But when you eradicate all the bacteria and yeast that's in your gut, that's there to help you live and have good thought process and energy, you just become an open pastry dish to whatever's coming in. So right after that, I started to suffer from gastritis. And I went home, and Mom was like, oh, try some of this. I was like, we're going down the hokey pokey path. And I was like, don't tell me how this is made, just let me try it. So she allowed me to try some of her homebrew kombucha. And I was like, oh, this doesn't taste bad. So, and then within 10, 15 minutes, I could feel my stomach like deflating. I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And I didn't know I was irritated until I wasn't irritated. Right, and I was like, I can see the sun now. So I knew I had to bring it back just for myself to be able to survive. And Mom was like, you can try some at the grocery store. I tried it and I was like, what is this? This is disgusting. And then I was like, let me just try to brew this at home for me and my family, because I know with the background of bioengineering, I was like, I know that something about this is still natural and healthy and I need it in my life.
Right. I saw that you looked at YouTube videos and you kind of taught yourself the brewing process, which is amazing. So when did you think to take it to the next step where you thought, okay, I'm helping myself am I interested in possibly helping other people who may be having the same problems?
So moved down here to Tallahassee. I had the opportunity to work for a major college here, and the pay wasn't paying. So I was like, I'm going to bow out gracefully, just lean back on my husband. And read the book called The Alchemist, which I would recommend to anyone that is going through like pivotal points in their life. And I was like, I have to just sit back and relax and really figure out what my next move is. So I still had my homemade kombucha, and when kombucha is made, it makes a baby, or what we call another military base, right on top of itself, and it floats in sweet tea. So it's floating on top, and I was like, Craigslist was hot then. So I started selling.
Sold it on Craigslist?
Yeah. I sold the babies on Craigslist.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, even just doing that, like how healthy and strong they were. I was just selling them, and people were like, you don't know. They would come back and just send me messages.
How much better it was?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're really making a difference for me, and I'm going to share your information with someone else. I was like, okay, that doesn't hurt at all. So I took a moment. I was like, well, maybe, because the money was coming in. I was like, well, maybe this should be a business. And I was like, well, we'll see. Let's just make up a little Facebook or Instagram account and see what happens. And from there, it only took a couple of months. A local restaurant reached out and was like, hey, do you brew kombucha? And I was like, I'm not going to say no, but
Right.
but let me figure out the steps that I need to take this to the next level.
That's awesome. All right. Can you just tell us a little bit about Tally Kombucha? I know you have other products, your children inspired, some snacks. So just kind of give us an overview of what you offer.
So Tally Kombucha, we are a company that's here to help you become the best version of yourself. That's our secret mission. And we do that by rewiring your brain through your gut. So everything that we make, we want to make sure that it's organic, it's gluten-free, and it's vegan. So through that process, the first thing that we made were our fruit roll-ups, which are infused with kombucha. And I made that for my daughter because that's when the scenario of, hey, if your child has food dye in their system, it can mentally mess them up. So I was like, oh, great, we got to figure this out. So after 1.5 to 2 years, and with my nerd science background, I was like, we're going to get this down on how to keep the probiotics in its state, but also something that's healthy and a good way for the kids to actually enjoy it. So it tastes straight like a fruit roll-up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And then our kombucha, which inspires all of our other products, we keep it where it is in its natural state. So what you get at the grocery store is going to be totally different than what you get from Tally Kombucha. So we always keep the flavor first, natural carbonation level. So if you do have gut issues, it's not irritating your gut. And then we also have higher in antioxidants. So you naturally are going to feel relieved after you drink our kombucha.
Great. Well, thank you. Congratulations. I know it's been like almost 10 years, right?
I feel like it.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. All right. No offense. I appreciate the first two kinds of brewing, but we're moving to my favorite kind of brewing now, which is beer. All right. So, Alison, welcome. Thanks.
Hi.
I'm going to start with you. So, you're a Tallahassee person,
I am
right?
born and raised.
Right. So, tell us about you. Went to McClay all through?
I did. I
All right,
did
so tell us-
13 years at McClay.
Nice. All right. So, tell us about your family and everything.
I have 2 sisters. I'm the middle child, so I'm not an oldest like the other 2. And so I grew up here in Tallahassee. We also have a family farm in South Georgia. So we have 500 acres with cows and pine trees and other things up there. My dad runs the farm now. His parents had the farm for him. It's like 4 or 5 generations in the family. But he had 3 girls, and I was the one that got dirty. So I was always running equipment at the farm. I also worked, my dad did construction, so I was out doing construction as a kid. I was always the one that was willing to go wherever he was going and doing whatever he was doing. So I went up to Atlanta, went to school, got a construction degree, came back down here, and am a licensed general contractor here in town. And then also we started a brewery here too.
Okay. Yeah, so you went to Georgia Tech, right?
I did.
And you major in some kind
It
of...
was, a building construction degree.
Okay.
So
what was your plan then? Did you plan on being a contractor or a builder of some kind?
I did, yeah. I knew from before I even went to Georgia Tech that I wanted to be a builder. I started as a civil engineering major there, and there was a lot more math than I wanted to do. So after we left there, I did work in Atlanta for different home developers and things like that for a little while. Just decided we needed to get out of the traffic of Atlanta. And I think I always knew I wanted to start my own company. Luckily, my husband was a military brat, so he didn't have a hometown. So I convinced him to come back to Tallahassee. And when we started our business, when we moved back down here. So.
Okay. And you restored buildings for the Florida Park Service?
I did. So I spent a couple years working for the Florida Park Service in their construction division. So the work that I did there, a lot of it was either we had acquired properties that we were turning back into their natural, like Silver Springs was going on when I was there. So we were turning it back into a natural habitat, or like Weeki Wachee, we were returning the old shell where you watch the mermaids into, like, restoring the old roof and things like that. And in South Florida, everything I did was mostly returning things to their historic spaces or their natural habitats is what I was doing.
What did you enjoy most about being a contractor? Why was that appealing to you?
I like creating things. So I was just telling somebody a minute ago, there are so many people in this world that can't go from a blank slate to conceptualize a new space or a new use or a new anything. So I love being able to turn nothing into something, or something abuse something as well. So I just have always really liked the hands-on and the completion. You complete a project and then you do another project. So it's you always get to see the end product of what you've done, and then you get to move and do something else. So
we don't all get to do that all the time. So that's good. All right, you're also a mom.
I am. I have two girls.
How old are they?
We'll be 17 next week and 14.
Okay. So pre-beer, technically, probably.
Yeah, they know a lot more about beer than other kids their age.
I'm sure. All right, well, this is where the story gets interesting. This is just so fascinating to me. All right, so in 2013, right? Yeah, you and your husband launched Amicus Brewing with 3 other couples. So a total of 8 people in all.
So fun.
And you're all friends from Faith Presbyterian Church. I have to say, some of my best friends are church beer friends, so I'm all about that. But first, where did the idea come from? A bunch of friends sitting around enjoying a craft beer saying, let's go into business doing this.
I think that's where a lot of beer ideas come from.
Probably. Yeah.
So not only did we go to church together, but we had a group of church friends who went camping together. So we would go to state parks all over the state of Florida and some Georgia. But this was pandemic-ish time. We were at a very small, in St. Mary's, Georgia, at a very small brewery that was kind of in the back of a little house. And one of our partners, who is actually a pastor here in town, is a home brewer. So he's been brewing, and he would brew things that we would take camping with us. So we would travel with kegs of beer to go camping. You got to do something with your time. So he's like, well, I could brew on this kind of system. And we're like, well, we could open a brewery. So we did not have any...
It's dangerously close to moonshining is what it sounds like.
Yeah, that's kind of what we were doing to that point. But we were like, there's no reason we couldn't do this. And so my husband and I, having already successfully had a business for 10 years, we started putting the numbers together, because we're the numbers people. And so we're like, wait, it actually makes monetary sense to try to do this. And we're like, Sheldon, are you in on brewing the beer? He's like, sure. So we just drank too much beer camping and decided to open a brewery.
All right, well, that's awesome. So part of your role in this process was restoring the Waterworks building. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's kind of my favorite part of the process, because I am a builder and also have the historic restoration background. But more than that, I had a friend who lived growing up on Gulf Terrace Drive. So I drove past that Waterworks building my entire childhood and saw that dilapidated building, that cistern. We didn't know what it was. Now I'm intimate with it. But just seeing that space that nobody had ever been into. So when we decided we were going to open a brewery, we just started looking for places to build. And we knew we wanted to own our property. We really thought it would be great if we got something with a lawn where people could hang out. Those were kind of our only requirements. So we were looking all over town, and that space became available. It went up for sale just on LoopNet. So we were like, we got to look at it. And when we went in there, it had no mechanical, electrical, or plumbing inside that building. Every single door and window was boarded up and needed all new doors and windows. The ground was dirt. And I said, this has got to be a brewery. Like, there's nothing else the space can be. And so we started working with the historic preservationists because it was on the historic registry. So we had to make sure that we kept it true to its original space. We started working with the city to get a grant to renovate the space because there was a lot of work that needed to be done. And we just dug in and decided it was going to work. And it has been amazing. If you go in the space, there's a wall of history of the building, and I wrote that piece, so I did all the digging and
so
the history.
So you can write if you had to.
A little bit. I try not to. It's all numbers for me. But I wrote that piece, and so I got to learn so much about that space and how it was used. And really the most exciting thing for me and the Historic Preservation Society, because they really get excited about this, is that it was inside that building were just diesel wells. So there was like 2 guys that worked there, and they worked there from like 1900 to 1950. Then it was boarded up and nobody worked there. So nobody had been in that building in the city forever.
Wow.
So we now have exposed that building to more of Tallahassee than had ever seen that space before. And I just think that's a really cool piece of Tallahassee history.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. All right, so just real quick, give us an overview of what Amicus is all about, the vision, the beer, the whole...
So because we were 8 of us and we're Presbyterian, so we do everything by committee. And so when we started deciding what we were going to be, we had a committee of like, who are we? What do we want to say about ourselves? And like, how we came up with our name. There was a committee for the name of Amicus. And what we really wanted to be was an open, welcoming space for the community. We wanted people to be able to use our space. We wanted to invite other people in, which is why we have rotating food trucks. We have other pop-up vendors. We have, all kinds of community events over there. We always say yes to everything because what we really just want it to be is a place for people to hang out, get to know other people in the community. We have our customer base is anybody from somebody who's just turned 21 to somebody who walks down the hill and is, retired coming in. So we run the gamut of people in there, and they interact with each other. The great thing about beer is that everybody wants to hang out and talk to each other. So it's just been a easy space. The lawn has created a space where people can just hang outside. We put a fence up, not to keep people out, but to keep the children in, because people bring their children, they run around, they roll down the hill. I mean, it's really been used as this, like you talked about third spaces. It's so important to have those spaces. And we just, we're there a lot. The owners, you'll see most of us there at different times because we also want people to know that we're welcoming and accepting, and how important it is for us to interact with others as well.
That's great. Well, congratulations. It's
Thanks.
A great addition to the community, and it's a great spot. And what a great use of a spot that was sort of like where we're here, Cascades in general, using a spot that had been wasted and just not paid any attention to for a long, long time. So, well, congratulations. So we have a few more minutes. I think I want to just leave with a question, especially since we have women entrepreneurs, and you all have either, you own your businesses now, but you've also had businesses in the past. So I just wanted to ask about, it doesn't have to be related to gender or anything, but just in general, barriers that you faced and had to overcome, and maybe what you learned from that.
Well, I will say gender has been a big barrier in my life. People ask us why we decided to be a women-owned brewery, because none of the women are brewers that own the brewery. And our first answer is there's a lot more to owning a business than just brewing. So we are doing many of the other things there. But having been a woman in construction as well, I have been overlooked many times as being the lady in the office or the, I can't tell you how many inspectors will tell my husband, oh, I spoke to your secretary. And I'm like, I'm the licensed general contractor. I'm the one that owns this business. So I just think it's so, if you do not put yourself up front, if you do not put the women up front, they just assume they're in the back. And so I think it's so important in what you're doing to make sure people know what you're doing. And you have to advertise it, because there's always going to be an assumption. If there's somebody older than you in your business, they're going to assume that person's in charge. If there's a male, they're going to assume that. So I think that a big barrier for me has always been saying, hey, I'm also a middle child. So I say, hey, look at me a lot.
The forgotten one, as my middle daughter reminds me all the time.
Yes. So I just think it's always important to be an advocate for yourself and to put yourself out there.
And just real quickly, have you seen any improvement in that over your career? I'll take that as a no.
Sure.
So really not.
No, but I will tell you that I have had people that I've worked with over the years tell other people, like, this is so specific to construction, but like my concrete contractor's on a job and he's an older man, and the truck will pull up to pour and they'll go try to talk to whoever's in charge, and he's always like, she's the one in charge. So I've had people that I work with know that I'm the one in charge, and I've seen them teach other people that just show up like how it is.
That's positive. So. All right, Michaela?
So what I've learned is something that I've also practiced, is that I gravitate towards the person that has the most confidence. So through this process of being a woman in business, you have to build your own confidence in it to be in business, because business is business at the end of the day. And you can recognize a boss who's at the table by just their confidence. So if you're going to stay in business, develop your confidence, know your industry, and stick to your guns, and be willing to pull them out when you need to.
So that sometimes that has to be verbally, not just body language, right?
Oh, it has to be both. Because when you're sitting at a table with big boys at the table, yes, they would consider you as just another woman. But if you're not sitting at the table being coy, oh, that's so nice. But you're sitting there and you're engaging in the same conversation as well as they are, then they're going to see you as a player at the table. So leave the coyness out at the door and realize that you're here to represent yourself and also your business.
That's great. Shannon?
I think my first entrepreneur experience was in middle school. There was a convenience store on the way to middle school, so I would buy up all the Blow Pops and Jolly Ranchers and Airheads, and then I would sell them at lunchtime at double the cost. And I made some bank, I will say.
Yeah.
But, that was, again, I always have been one where I'm like, I can just do it myself, right? And I think that you can do it yourself to start it up, right? And so in the case of Ground Ops, Chris and I really, you can start it up, right? And, the family can start it up. But to really scale it and for it to be successful, you have to be able to really build your leaders within. And, it's not easy in a college town, right, where you have a little bit more of a transient population. There's probably a whole other podcast on the different kind of generations of workers and different work ethic and kind of the way they approach work. I mean, they're all just different. And so really having to remind yourself that, because if you own a business, you really have this feeling that you can never truly step away, right? And that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is that there's always something going on that's going to demand your attention. But really the only way to still be able to kind of preserve all the other parts of life, family, all the other things, is that you have to identify those leaders from within. And even now, we're talking about, okay, how do we go to, location number 2 and 3? It's like, to be able to do that, you have to, in a way, you set your ego aside, number one. It's not really all about you, right? You've got leaders within that can really step up. And I learned a lot of that from Terry Ard at the Moore Agency, because that's one thing that she does really well, is identifying the leaders and then raising them up. That's really the only way that any company or organization can grow, is to have that happen.
Great. Thank you. That is great advice from all three of you. So Shannon, Michaela, Alison, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your journeys, and congratulations and best of luck in the future. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening to the show. You can subscribe at Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, please leave us a review. It really does make a difference. Thanks to my amazing staff at Fiore Communications, who pick up the slack while I'm working on these podcasts, and to Troy Bloom for composing our theme music. You can hear more of Troy's creations on Facebook and Instagram at Troy Bloom Music. To connect with the podcast or suggest a future guest, follow us on social media or email us at podcast@fiorecommunications.com.